So welcome to Transform Gov, the Digital Government Podcast, and it's brought to you in association with Accenture. So I'm Maeve Neefsey, and on today's episode, I'm joined by John Callaghan, whose company Partsol is a US-funded AI company and has relocated its headquarters to Ireland. And they say one of the reasons for this relocation is our EU pro-regulation stance. So that probably sounds a bit counterintuitive to us all, but we'll find out more when we speak to John. So John, you're very welcome to Transform Gov.
Oh, thank you, Maeve. It's wonderful to be here.
So tell us why Partsol decided to relocate to Ireland from Florida, right? That's where your HQ.
Yeah, our headquarters was in Tampa, Florida, and we've relocated to Dublin, Fitzwilliam Square. Very happy to be here because it is so pro-regulatory, and we look at the recent, even this week, advice from the Irish government about using certain types of AI, and our AI is quite different, and we thought it'd be better suited and better showcased in a regulatory environment to show that AI and regulation can actually live together. And I think that's one of the important factors is that they don't have to necessarily be at loggerheads. They don't necessarily have to be opposite. You can have two things that actually work well together. And we felt that the EU was a proper place to prove that. And then when the US catches up, we'll be more than happy to, of course, offer it there as well. But for right now, I think the EU is a great proving ground for us. Okay,
so do you think that our stance on, the AI Act and trying to put parameters around how AI is used and how it's, kind of being used in combination with human. Is that really important, do you think, or is it a positive?
No, it's very positive. I think the reason is the analogy I like to use is AI is a little bit like fire. Fire can either warm your home or burn it down. Mm-hmm. And the reason it doesn't burn down homes is because somewhere along the lines, people put in place frameworks and regulatory stances on how you should have a fire. Originally, it was rocks around a fire, and then there were stoves and other things. But we always had regulation around that, and we sort of learned from the regulation what works and what doesn't work. If you don't have regulation, how are we supposed to learn those things? So the regulation I think you've put in place with the acts and with GDPR and other things is extremely positive because it's going to show AI how exactly businesses need to use them, how governments need to use them. And without that, how exactly we're going to learn? How are we going to trial and error? So I think in this nascent stage of AI, if we don't have that, we're basically guessing. And we can't do that in government.
I mean, one of the things that we were all excited about on the team about you joining us is because I think your ambition really in Partsol is really change the face of AI and how we see it right now.
Correct, yes.
So what is it that's different about what you're doing? I mean, look, I know that we're all learning there's new platforms that are GenAI, I suppose, in terms of the discipline, let's call it. But you're taking a different route, are you?
We are, and I think I'm glad you brought GenAI because that's almost the opposite of what we're trying to do. Generative AI and really the history of AI has been with probabilities and assumptions. And AI is trained on basically probabilities and the machine trying to understand, to a large extent, what you're attempting to do or what you're attempting to find or what answer you're attempting to get. We don't feel that's good enough for government and business because in business and government, you can't make guesses. So what we attempted to do and have done is build what we call deterministic AI. We build it off a deterministic AI.
Okay.
And what deterministic AI is in the simplest form is if you imagine a taxonomy from when we were all in science class, we had a genus, an order, and a family. It's a very structured thing. And the reason it's structured is because it's immutable. An Irish hare can only be an Irish hare. It can't be a German shepherd or a Siamese cat. The reason for that is there's certain elements in there that have to be true. And if you insert other elements, they're either rejected or you don't have an Irish hare. We've been able to do the same thing with AI where we've structured our models to be deterministic. In other words, they're built on immutable facts. Now, you may say, how do you do that? Because, there are billions of facts or trillions of facts or innumerable facts.
Facts that contradict each other as well.
And facts can contradict each other. What we're able to do, the secret to what we've been able to do is encode everything. So where we look at the example I gave of the Irish hare, where that's a natural encoding because someone's taken the time to map that out, we've been able to take that process and automate it and be able to encode everything from this microphone to the camera, to people, to organizations, and encode it in such a way that it's all the way up to first principles in basic sciences. So it's an expansive library of these things, which we've been working on for more than 20 years. It took more than 5 years to actually build the models we have because we refused to go on the probabilistic route. We refused to just front-end large language models that are currently out there. So
where did all this come from? I mean, what's your background of the team and that kind of brought you here, if you like?
Oh, yeah. So it originally started working in large-scale government projects in the United States where we were trying to figure out this scientific method of encoding. It was to solve hard problems around the world, from economic to education
Were
to.
you working in government at that stage?
We were working in government, yes. We were working for the government.
Okay.
So, yes, we were working in government. Some of our founder was working with the government at that point. It was used for some national security pieces, but also we did projects in Africa trying to educate people, bring water to certain parts of the world, to try to bring energy to certain parts of the world. It was for all sorts of hard human problems. And for a number of years, we were very happy doing it as kind of a one-off. It was a huge math problem, a lot of one-off programs. Around 2018, due to a high demand, we said, can we commercialize this? Can we make it into something more than just a few people that are consulting? And we tried, and the problem was the only models out there were those probability models that I talked about.
Okay. So you were, if I paraphrase you were out in the real world trying to solve problems, using your knowledge, your know-how. But the probability aspect really bothered you, particularly in difficult, important situations where probability wasn't enough.
Well, I'll give you an example. And when you're working with CEOs or leaders of government, you can't go in and say there's a 60% probability this will work or a 70% probability that this is correct. They won't accept that. You have to come in with nearly 100%, and you have to be able to prove it. And so if you try to take artificial intelligence into a leader of a government or a police force or an NGO and say, well, I think this is 75% correct, they're going to say, we can't spend our resources on 75%, or we can't commit people to this project on 75%, or we can't make an economic decision for the country on that percentage. So when we saw that, we saw the models that were being used with probability. We said, we can't build this on an AI platform that's based on probabilities. So what we ended up doing was creating our own. We created a deterministic model, which is what you see today with our landmark tool, TIE.
And when I was preparing for today, I was reading a little bit, obviously, on your website, and you mentioned stem cells. Where does stem cells fit into your model? Because stem cells are fascinating in terms of how they can morph and learn and move. But how does that fit into what you're doing?
So I'll try to give the most the answer.
A common person's language, please.
Yes, please. So
for me,
the way we do so a stem cell for us is an AI taxonomy, as we talked about, that it's actually self-replicating and self-determinant. So what that means is, like our human stem cells, they're able to replicate and they're able to differentiate, which just means they are able to break and do different things. What we did is we created stem cells based on that taxonomy approach. So like an Irish hair.
How do you create a stem cell? In this context,
the first piece is very difficult, which is you have to sit down and manually code it in. Once you manually code it in, you then teach a machine how to be a stem cell. That's the secret to what we do. So we teach machines and agents and machines how to be stem cells, how to learn how to replicate and differentiate. And then so they take the human input, which we've done over the past 20 years, and they're able to take that and expand it both up toward the natural sciences and down toward what we would call innovation. So I'll give you an example. If there was a new type of Irish hair that emerged tomorrow, our stem cells would go and find that in the world and say, this is an Irish hair, but it's a different type of Irish hair. That's where this gets exciting, is that stem cells, when they differentiate, create innovation. When they relate to other things, they can create innovation. And that's what we've been able to do. So we came up with the term because we were doing work in medicine. We realized that the taxonomy approach we were using was very similar to stem cells. And so when we did that, our founder, who's very creative, said, well, this is like an AI stem cell. And so while we don't claim to be organic, we claim to have quasi-organic properties in the stem cells in terms of how they operate.
The way they
replicate the way they operate. Yes, exactly.
And just in terms of the output. So if you were trying to imagine GenAI, and I read this on your website, so you could tell me whether you've moved on from there, but you were saying that GenAI is more like a kind of a probability, more like a creative brain. And then what you're doing, the deterministic, is more kind of logical, fact-based. I mean, is that simplifying it far too much?
I don't think simplifying too much. We claim to be boring AI. The reason we're boring AI is because we do what we do in the world of government, in banking, of finance very, very well, but we don't claim to do the same thing ChatGPT does or Gemini or any of the other products. The reason is because we're focused on absolute truth. And as you mentioned before, in some things, it may not exist, or there may be different opinions, or that may not be what the term is for. What we're looking for is, how do we take our stem cells and factor these in to give an output, which is absolute truth within the context of what someone's looking for. So in government, a lot of times people look for anti-money laundering. Is the money coming from a source that may be nefarious, or maybe there's countries you don't want to do business with? Obviously, countries like that or people like that hide their intentions. Our job is to find them, and so we do a very good job with that. Whereas if you wanted to find out who won the rugby match or how to make a certain Irish recipe, that's not what we're for. We would actually not even be able to work with that. We're very narrow, very focused, but very accurate and efficient and cost effective in what we do. But it's not the same thing as what you see with ChatGPT.
So I'm imagining then that you're going to see GenAI and deterministic AI, which is your solution, working side by side, doing different jobs rather than one is better than the other.
Yeah.
And you're saying, look, if you've got things of national security or national interest, it's no good just to have probability. You've got to have much more certainty.
Exactly. I think that's a great point, is that this one is not replacing the other. They're very much meant to work together because each has their lane. And what our proposition is that for things that are high consequence, high trust, or high risk, you really need an AI system that focuses on truth and trust. Well, if you're doing something that may not have that level of risk, but you want more of a wider scope, then GenAI is a fantastic tool, a revolutionary tool. But for governments especially, when you have to know something, you have to be accurate on something, you really can't deal in probabilities, and you really don't want to deal with a system that has some other flaws as well, that in terms of, where is the information going? What information is being brought in? How is it being shared? Does it hallucinate? Is the accuracy correct? And when you're making decisions quickly in the government, you just can't have that. And so we believe they can live side by side and actually at some points interact very well, but there is a distinct difference.
Well, look, I think I have to make a quick break here. I think it's a good time to, because I'm everybody, you've got to come back because we need to just give a very short break, and there's a lot more that John's going to share with us. So bear with us for 2 minutes.
Through the power of cloud, data and AI, Accenture is helping the public sector by blending human ingenuity, technology and a delivery-focused culture to turn their ambitions into action. Be ready for any challenge by adopting a continuous reinvention mindset to deliver human-centric services that adapt and grow with your needs. Contact the team at Accenture to find out more.
So we talked a bit about where the idea for deterministic AI, I nearly said GenAI, deterministic AI came from and the role it plays. But what about you as a team? What's your background? I mean, I know that you were doing projects with government, but where did you all start from? Is it Darrell Williams who's your founder?
Darrell Williams, our founder. Darrell actually was a colonel in the lieutenant colonel in the Air Force. He started there. I started as a computer science and business. So I had the tech background. Our backgrounds are really very diverse, and I think that's what makes our team interesting. Is that we have people who've been analysts in the United States government. We've had people who are have worked in risk compliance, have worked in other types of government. We have numerous people who've worked in NGOs. It's the mix, I think, that really makes it very interesting. Of course, we have engineers that are very, very talented, but it's such a diverse group, and I think that's why we've been able to come up with these models. Is our creative process, is one where we don't just simply have groupthink, and because we don't have groupthink, we are able to get in a room and figure out how to solve these hard problems and really come from a different perspectives on it, even engineering wise, and understand how some of these stem cell issues that we had to wrestle with for a number of years could be solved. And so we've had, my wife, for example, is a doctor. She's helped us on certain things with this. We've had other medical professionals come in. It's been a really interesting group over the years that have all filtered in.
And just to make it real for people, because I can hear people from here, tweaking up and thinking, well, that could really work for us in the public sector where fact is so important. Can you give us examples of where your solution's being applied and the kind of outcomes?
Yeah, I mean, so obviously a lot of our customers are in the regulatory industry, meaning that are in the regulatory industries that are highly regulated.
Okay.
Things like banks, law firms, financial institutions, accountancies, insurance. Those are all very interesting, and obviously I think you can see the use cases there would be know your customer, anti-money laundering. Legal, we have all sorts of things because there's discovery involved. So we have obviously absolute truth in the law is something that everyone would like to have. In government, there's numerous cases. One is obviously trying to figure out national security. When you're dealing with national security elements, you want to make sure that the people you're giving information to and the people you're getting information from are correct. We've worked with numerous economic models in terms of how do we improve economic conditions in certain countries. And the reason that's important is, again, you want to make sure the implementations and interventions you're making actually work.
So how would that, tell me the kind of engagements you had. Obviously you don't have to tell me which and who, but where you started, the problems you're trying to solve and how you dealt with it in terms of that problem and your approach.
So the problems often come from either NGOs or government themselves. I'll give you an example, and this is one I can share. In Afghanistan, during the war period, hopefully the war period's over there, but during the war period, we had an NGO there, and one of the problems they were having was they're trying to figure out why the Afghan government was not being accepted as, and why the Taliban was basically taking hold in a lot of these villages. And what we found was that it was a little counterintuitive we mapped out with stem cells the Taliban, the Afghan government, the ecosystem. Probably if you were looking at it, it's like a blueprint, if you will, that has about 100 different layers on the blueprint. And if you peel each one back, you learn more. What we found was that the things they were doing as an NGO were actually counterproductive. They were dropping basketballs and food supplies and all these type of things into villages. But in that kind of culture, that actually shows weakness, that the government couldn't take care of them. So one thing we came back and said was, you need to let the government actually take care of these people and stop helping so much and find other ways to help. That's one example with an NGO of how we're able to gear them toward the right answer and the right solution.
And in that case, you're using data?
Data, of course, yeah. We use data. We use, it was a data model. It was the type of AI stem cells and all that. But again, when it comes together, the output of it in the report format we're able to use gives those type of answers which we just aren't able to find. And so you have to understand that it's the context you're in. It's taking all that information, put in the context of what you're trying to accomplish. That's another thing we do with our system is, while the stem cells create the data, it's the deterministic agents that actually do the intelligence. And so when you run those through and try to understand why wasn't NGO successful, because you think, well, we're giving them food, we're giving them water, we're giving them basketballs and other things to be able to play with. But in that culture, it showed weakness for the government. And a lot of examples like that have been around the world, whether we're trying to create a well and negotiating with local tribal leaders in parts of Africa, whether you're trying to find the economic benefit in certain countries around the world that are doing banking. We work often in the Caribbean, and it's trying to figure out how do we stop customs violations and smuggling and try to get people good on digital currencies. We've done that before too. It's a whole host of things where people have to have truth. They want the right answers because there are oftentimes other factors involved in government, as you well know, that try to push back on things. And if there's a way to be, I hate to say corrupt, people will often find it. So a lot of governments actually use us as that neutral body for anti-corruption that many people want and need in those fields. So again, some of the time we're working in some countries, there's such a high level of corruption, you see that often money gets taken away from these very good causes. And by using AI to help understand the frameworks and making sure that organizations they're going to actually work. Another one is we did with a food bank. An organization was giving away food. Very sad situation, which is a lot of the food organizations were actually taking the food and reporting they'd given it away and taken the money. Over 100 of these organizations existed. We had to go and root out the ones.
They were actually selling the food.
They were selling the food, taking it for other purposes. They were not getting the food and billing the NGO or billing the governments for food. It was very, very sad because this was going to people who desperately needed it. What we were able to do with our AI is take our AI, look into each one of these organizations, break them down, and with absolute accuracy say, these are the good ones, these are the bad ones, and here's who's behind it, and here's who's actually doing the theft.
Okay. So again, investigating using AI in a way.
We investigate. Again, it can be used as a verification validation tool. It's another type of know your customer. Okay. And in this case, the government's customer is the food banks. They wanted to make sure that the food is getting to the people. We make sure that the process to determine that is accurate as close to 100% as we can be.
So one of the things that comes to mind when you hear about projects like that is, okay, great, the outputs sound amazing. What operationally and on an implementation level is involved? Is it onerous? Is it similar to other AI, or what? Give us a sense of that.
So we have data that comes from a variety of sources, and so we actually need very little input from a user. So our general product is a SaaS product, so anyone, I shouldn't say anyone can use it, but we have it deployed via the web. But it's really very intuitive in terms of you can type in things about an organization, about a person, and it'll come back with a report that's based on the stem cells. And so it's very easy to use. There's hardly any onerous in the implementation of such a thing. Most governments and most organizations find they can get on board with it in a couple of days. And that's mostly just simply because it takes a little bit of training to understand how to speak to a machine, at least our machine. And you want to make sure that any data they do want to put in is in there. So,
and is it relying on large language models
No,
as well? No,
absolutely not.
Okay, so what's it relying on?
Our own models, our own deterministic models. So we do the only time we utilize large language models is in the reporting, because why not use it in reporting? Because to write a report, we don't need to reinvent the wheel. What everything's based off of, though, is we actually, that pivotal moment in 2018 when we decided to build our own, was actually taking and saying, we're not going to use a large language model. We're going to use our own type of AI. And so a lot of proprietary things go into the deterministic models, a lot of taxonomy-based search and various other things we use. But we don't use a large language model because, again, that tends to go toward the probabilities and the other assumption-based things that we just don't want, we can't have. Our customers won't have it.
Well, look, I have to take one very quick break, but I have a really good question to ask when we get back. So
Fantastic.
This is for the people who are entering the Ireland eGovernment Awards. Here's more details. Right, I have to remind you that we have now a limited number of tickets, because although we're going to a bigger venue this year, which is the O'Reilly Hall for the Ireland eGovernment Awards, we really can't take hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, but we can take you. So make sure you book your ticket as fast as possible.
Beautiful venue.
Absolutely stunning. And it's going to be great because we're going to have the morning summit. It's going to be in the same venue. So nobody has to go anywhere else. They just come into the summit. And then we go straight from the summit to the lunchtime ceremony, which will be wearing the Taoiseach. On Taoiseach, Micheál Martin is going to join us, and he is going to present the winners with their awards.
And tickets are how much?
Tickets are, well, it depends. You can get a table or you can get a single ticket. So it depends on exactly how many you're purchasing.
But it's all on digital?
Govawards.com. So digitalgovawards.com, where you can purchase your tickets. And it's really, really straightforward. But please don't be sad because you didn't get your ticket. Make sure you book it as quick as you can.
It is a great event, and it's brilliant for networking. It's also great for social.
It is, but it's great. It's great fun. But I think we've found from people telling us why they love coming every year is because they get to hear of other stuff that's going on that's relevant to them, but they also get to network and make connections. I don't mean that in a kind of a naff way. Let's say you're trying to do something that somebody else has already done. Sure, why not meet them there? And then you can bridge a connection.
And we saw that last year.
We did. I forgot which one you're talking about, but I know it happens all the time.
Well, I was there when they were meeting, and they said, oh, we could do that with you.
Yeah, I mean, amazing. Yeah. And the OGCIO will be there, which is really important as well, because they can help everybody. So make sure you get your tickets, and we want to see you there. And don't forget, Taoiseach will be there on the day because he thinks you're really important too.
And book now.
And thank you to Accenture, our sponsor, because none of this would happen without them. So you are telling me, we're learning rather than you telling me that, you can apply different kinds of AI for different kinds of problems. Tell me situations where possibly you wouldn't suit an application.
I think there are numerous problems where you wouldn't necessarily want to trust AI at this point, even ours. Humans are obviously still very important. I think when you get into the spaces of human lives, we need to be very careful with the use of AI. I think when you get in the standpoint of things which humans still need to make decisions on, even with intelligence, I think there are certain lines that need to be drawn with AI around the not necessarily the use, but how far we take it. For example, what we try to get our customers to do is to use AI to then make a decision. It's a decision-making tool. It's a decision enabler. It'll make your life a lot easier. It'll make your life a lot faster because you'll have answers more quickly. But we don't expect the AI to make a call. We expect humans to make a call still. When you cross that line, I think you're in a very dangerous territory because, again, how do you know the machine is 100% accurate? Our machine, we say is absolute truth, but we don't actually mean for it to be implemented into a actionable sense in terms of it doing things without human intervention. The reason for that is even with facts, absolute truth, human beings still need to make decisions. A machine should not be telling you what to do.
No, I agree. And of course, the AI Act actually stipulates that. So I can see why you would be interested in deploying your solution here. In terms of, next steps, you've just raised 17.5 million, which is a vote of confidence. Who are your backers, by the way?
We have. So this was a very interesting friends and family round. So we have some wonderful people that believe in the product and believe in it for a number of years.
A pretty large number of friends and family, or else they're very wealthy friends and family.
I think we had some very nice backers. And again, we've been very blessed throughout the history of our company that we've had some very good support in this. But again, I think it's one of those things where they've seen the mission. And the mission is really what's important, is they've seen the mission in government, they've seen the mission with NGOs, and they see what it can do for people. And when they see that, they believe in it. And when we made this commercial turn to do more in the commercial space and release an actual commercial product, the natural outflow was we want to be part of this because we've seen what you've done for nations and for countries and for villages. If you can do this for a bank or for a insurance company, we want to be all in.
So having seen and followed so many SaaS companies and AI as well coming out of San Francisco, do you think the fact that you're not coming out of San Francisco, unless I'm wrong, is just made you a different kind of people, a different kind of solution? I
think it has. Yeah, I think we, and I don't want to obviously say this about the entire group, but I think we avoid groupthink to a certain degree. I think our backgrounds were coming out of actually having to solve problems, so we had to put the problem and have the technology fit the problem rather than having a hammer looking for a nail, so to speak. I think that does help. I think the other thing that helps is being in Ireland because I think we're in a unique setting here within the EU at a unique point in time. Things are changing so much here. I think we're in the vanguard of where AI will go in the future. And so
I have to ask you, did you use your AI solution to find out which country to go and make your HQ?
We did.
Good. I'd like to know. That's very interesting.
We did.
And it picked us.
We did. Well, I think it picked Ireland because, again, there are lots of factors that go into what is successful in Europe. Why would we want to be in Europe? And what we found was that, frameworks are coming to the U.S. whether they want them or not. I think we all agree on that. Now, how quickly they get there and the political...
in terms of regulations?
In regulations. Yeah. I think how quickly they get there, how they get there is to be determined. But I think if we play outside the realm of regulation at this point, we're kind of where the ball is at, not where it's going. So I think in all of U.S. is so much about what can we do to get a company off the ground and make something that looks kind of interesting or cool, and how do we get VC back, and how do we get funding, how do we get the next round, how do we exit? It's so much about the process, and we want to be more about the tech and actually to say, there's some things in AI we need to slow down on and be constrained on and figure out before we go rushing into a market or rushing to say we have the next solution. I think that's why we're in Ireland, is because the pace here in terms of the regulatory framework, in terms of how people do business, is different. We're not looking for an exit. We're looking for solutions, and we're looking for a mission-based company and mission-based technology. I think that's what makes us different.
Okay,
and so,
and I mean, from our listeners' perspective, let's say they're really excited about what you're saying. They really want to try it. They might have a discrete problem they're trying to solve.
Yes.
Is a subscription model, is it affordable? Are we talking, does it have to be huge projects?
No. It's very affordable. I mean, I think for most people, they'd find this shockingly cheap. The reason I say that is because we want to help people. The idea is to get the model out into the world. I mean,
could I log in tomorrow for free, or is everybody?
Well, you could log in for free. Some other people might have to pay a small amount. But I think that the point is that our goal and our mission at this point in our company's history is to show people there's a different way to do AI. And so, I think it's kind of like the fire analogy I made before. If I had the gift of fire and didn't share it, what kind of human being would I be? We have the gift of truth, and we need to share it. And so our goal
sounds religious now, John. It does. It sounds religious.
Well, I mean, no, but our goal right now is to show people that deterministic AI can be a solution to these type of hard problems that the governments are wrestling with. And I think in the tech sector, it's you want to be constrained in the government area. I think you want to say, look, how can I make sure that what I'm implementing is going to be something that A, solves my problem, but B, isn't a massive failure because we've tried to go too much too fast. Our goal is saying, look, why don't we start out with something that is reasonable, that is implementable, that we know will be successful, and from there we can expand because we know that truth carries, it's one thing in life that continues on is truth and trust. And we know truth and trust will always be in vogue. So if we start small and expand, that's how we think AI should come into government, is by that way, instead of some of these massive projects you see are very scary, in fact, of governments trying to go whole hog into AI, and then all of a sudden it either collapses or it doesn't quite do what they thought it would do.
Well, look, I think through our network, I mean, firstly, I'm sorry that we're even coming towards the end of the podcast because there's so much more we could talk about. And when you have some projects up and running here, please come back.
We will.
But I think there's great people in our network that listen to Transform Gov that would love to hear what you're talking about. I mean, for example, last week we spoke to Adapt, which is the Trinity and other universities' collaboration around AI. And I think that there's great opportunities to kind of fast track your access and let people actually see what it does. So we'll make some introductions, is what I'm trying to say.
Oh, thank you so much.
Not at all. Are you hiring?
We are hiring. We're hiring here in Ireland. First of all, we're looking for creative Irish people. I think is a major thing. We're hiring in sales. We're hiring in engineering. We're hiring in business development. We're hiring basically everything right now. As an Irish company, we truly want to become part of the community. I think it's important that, like I said before, we're not here to exit. We're here to stay. We want Ireland to become the home of deterministic AI. We're not looking to return to the United States. We're looking to base our U.S. business out of here. So we very much want to become part of the community. We're very much looking for very talented Irish people to come join us. We have a big hiring push right now that we're making. So if anyone's interested, please visit our website. But we're really more than happy to bring people on board in whatever capacity they would like to come on. And that includes collaborators. We're more than happy to have government collaborators, educational collaborators, because again, it's sharing the deterministic message to people that there is a new type of AI and it can actually be trusted. And I think that's the message out there I hope everyone takes away, is that I know a lot of people right now are trying to figure out AI, and it's almost like there are 100 buses and which one do we get on? And if we get on the wrong one, all of a sudden we're in Galway. Well, I mean, the idea is that, maybe we can change the way you look at AI. And if we can change the way you look at AI, maybe we can start using it in better ways and more trusted ways.
Well, I think the first thing is if somebody's interested, they should get in touch with you, right? And
Definitely.
And that there's room for doing a kind of a smallish project and then building from there. So how do people get in touch with you?
The best way is through our website, obviously.
Which is partsol.com?
Partsol.com,
Okay, partsol.com.
Yes. And of course, they can find us on the web if they just Google Partsol as well. So But yes, we're very much interested in just getting the message out there. And again, not to have the religious context, but I think we do want to spread the gospel of the deterministic AI message, which is that you can actually bring truth and trust in this and feel comfortable when you go home at night. I know one of the worst feelings in the world is you have machines running and you're not sure what the machine's doing. We've all had that incident with our phones, with our home computers. It's like, why doesn't this work? Why isn't it working? What's it going to do next? Well, it would be nice to come home and actually be able to trust your AI and get a good night's sleep. I know for many government people out there, there are a lot of sleepless nights with cybersecurity and other things. This is one thing you could go to sleep on.
Okay, well, that's a great message to leave with. And we're delighted you're in Ireland. You're welcome here. Hopefully it'll be a huge success and we'll all benefit from it. So thank you so much, John, for coming on to Transform
Thank you so
Gov.
much for having us, and we really appreciate it. Thank you.
Not at all. Well, look, I also want to thank our wonderful team here in the studio because I know that they've been working really hard. Studio manager Peter Rice, our video editor Neil Horner, sound engineer Lee Brennan. There's a new videographer here today. And apologies, I don't actually have your name yet, but I will catch up. And thanks always to South Dublin Podcast Studios. Good luck.